I'd like to say a few words before the whole stage is given to our celebrity. So just very quick snapshot of routine at Midway life, how it has been experienced through the years. So let's go. You're entering the building and you're hearing the beautiful piano music floating in the air. And you say to yourself, okay, that's Nick is playing his lovely music somewhere over there in the art under the stairs. And you make a few more steps and you see a fly announcing the presentation of the newly printed, long-awaited book of Nick's comics novel. You keep going. You're entering the elevator, the Midway information booth, and just in your face, you see a big, beautiful, gorgeous poster announcing the new production of Fort Point Theater Channel, with all credits given to all those who created that new production. And among founding directors, guess who? Yes, of course it is Nick. Then you're exiting to the floor and you say to yourself, what a nice painting over there. And even now, when Cynthia and Nick have graduated from Midway to Provincetown, we still have few paintings by Nick beautifying our walls. And of course, you anticipate to see one of Nick's animation, one my ever favorite film about teddy bear, with the title that I try to pronounce correctly, but it is French and I'm not good in French. So it should be somehow Florose, am I right?
Fleury Rose.
Fleury Rose, see?
Où est Fleury Rose?
Okay, so at this point, my poor mind is spinning because I try and not comprehend the whole panorama of Nick's many talents. But we, fortunately, in a good luck, we have a lucky day and we have Nick who is going to sort out all these many fancy hats he is wearing. So cool. So now it's all yours. Go sort it out for us.
Well, thank you, Olga. And Hannah and Mario. I love this series. I've been following it, and it's this is an honor, and it's and a pleasure. Cynthia and I lived at Midway Studios from 2007 till 2019, and these were some of the happiest years in my life. As Olga indicated, I got to do all sorts of things that I never thought I would get a chance to do, and in a community of tremendous collegiality and mutual support and creativity. So I prepared a PowerPoint slideshow, and I'm going to, it's got a lot of slides. I'm going to rush through lots of it, but interrupt me anytime if you have questions. I'm going to start with some, it's kind of organized by categories of stuff that I do, and I've left out a lot, even though I've piled in far too much. So here we go. That's the wrong slide. Okay. So, I was a city boy until 2009, the end of 2019, when we moved to Provincetown, and when we lived in Midway, I rode the subway every day and drew lots of pictures of the people there. These drawings I all did in the first few years that we lived at Midway. This is the Fort Point neighborhood, counterclockwise from the upper left. That's the Gillette parking lot, and then the vacant lot, or it was a vacant lot behind the cable company, and the Congress Street Bridge, and below that the Gillette building, and to the left of that all the horrendous buildings going up in Seaport neighborhood early on, but some people get to enjoy some open space there. That's good. And the lower left-hand corner is Necco Court when it was funky and full of dumpsters and small mammals. This is one of the drawings I did at that time, colorized with some help from my daughter Ruby. I think she put in those lightning bolts. These are some of the people that I used to draw in the neighborhood and on the. See if I can get rid of these pictures here. Okay. Yeah, the people in cafes, people on public transportation were the victims of my sketchbook for all those years. This is, can't I? Okay, this is, since I got to Provincetown, after I got to Provincetown, I tried, since I couldn't ride the subway, I tried to do paintings based on my subway drawings. This was the most successful. In general, that project didn't pan out so well. But here are some pictures of the beach. We live, this is a beach town, and this I think is Herring Cove. That's High Head, which is between Truro and Provincetown. This is our beach, St. Mary's Beach, right down near where we live here in Provincetown. These are some beach people. I think the guy on the top I think that's a very old drawing, and it's probably not the Cape, but Revere Beach or Winthrop Beach or something like that. But the one below it, I think that's the Cape. This is Cold Storage Beach and on the bay side of North Truro. This is the bulkhead outside the Phoenici's restaurant in our neighborhood. When you walk along Commercial Street in Provincetown, which runs the length of the town, you get these, in between every pair of houses, there are these views of the harbor and the bay, and it's quite wonderful. And if you go to the other main drag, which is Bradford Street, you also get to see the water if you're going over one of the hilltops. That's where we are in this picture. Provincetown has several high hills. I have a studio upstairs from the post office in the center of town, and this is the scrubby little beach outside between the post office and the harbor. And in our neighborhood, in the east end of Provincetown, there's a lot of wetlands and swamp. And if this were a painting, it would be very dark. But I left out all the darkness and just drew this fantastic tree that was growing there. We have these honeysuckle hedges on two sides of our house, and I've been drawing honeysuckle a lot, partly because of the project I'm working on now, which I will come to later on. But it's about the life of William Morris, the English designer and socialist, and he one of his many wallpaper designs as a designer was the honeysuckle wallpaper. I've also been keeping my hand in as a drawer and a painter by going Tuesday nights to these virtual life drawing sessions. Where so these are drawings. Some of them have some color in them, but they're essentially drawings. That's Becky, who is the co-host of that series. It's called Drawn Together, and it's free. The only cost is if you feel like tipping the model, you do that by Venmo, and so it's highly recommended. I've enjoyed this quite a lot. This fellow was dressed up as Dr. Faustus. The boots. On this particular night, I didn't have any color media with me, which was a shame because this lady had the most fantastic boots. They were day glow orange with bright violet stripes on them. But this will have to do.
Mhm.
Here's a woman looking at herself on her monitor.
Mm.
That mandala was just this huge wall hanging that this lady used as her backdrop. Oh, this is pastel. I was never interested in pastels till I started doing this Drawn Together series, and I've been having a lot of fun with that. Now I'm coming to some paintings, and going back to one of the oldest paintings I have an image of. This would be the early 70s. I lived on Green Street in Cambridge, and this is my younger brother and my younger sister hanging around the apartment that I had there. This just turned up because we're cleaning out our old house in Somerville, and this painting or drawing was not very well taken care of, obviously, but I like it just the same. I've done coming out to the Cape for 30, 40 years is for a large part of that time, my high art in quotes has been watercolor. Before we got this place where I am now, we stayed at a cottage colony in North Truro, and that's what you're seeing here, the deck of our cottage at the I'm blanking out on the name of it. Topside cabins. This is also topside cabins viewed from the water, looking up towards the bluff. And not far from there, this is one of those houses on Beach Point, on the outskirts of Provincetown, or the outskirts of Truro, if you like. This place is shuttered up for the winter. This is where the woods meet the dunes. That's kind of a long, sinuous line that runs all the way through the town here. Very inspiring. This is our yard many years ago. I think we just had a yard sale, and that's why there's a dining room table out in the yard. This is the edge of the developed part of Provincetown. These are some kerosene tanks that used to be on Harry Kemp Way, which is the old railroad right of way, which runs parallel with the two streets I mentioned. I painted this because the lady who ran the art association called on the members to do paintings for a show called Red. And the reddest thing I could think of was these rusty tanks. They're gone now. They've, like a lot of industrial artifacts and closer to you all, they've been replaced by luxury condos. This is a barge when they were repairing the pier in the middle of town, also many years ago. Our front door, here where I am now. This is the same view as this is the same view as this, but with the difference that there's a shed there now. And coming indoors, I don't know what happened to that bentwood chair, but this is our apartment. And now I want to show you a few paintings from this place that we love to go in Mexico. It's called Yelapa. And it's like an island. It isn't an island, but it's a cove that you can't get to by car. So it's kind of dreamy and bucolic, at least for us gringos who like to go there. These are some boys from the town fishing in the lagoon. Here we are. This is looking up into the mountains from the town. There's a river that runs into the town, and the Indian people who live in Yelapa come out to the middle of the river to make their phone calls, because otherwise you're under the jungle canopy and you don't get very good reception. This is an abandoned resort at the, I think, let's say eastern edge of the cove. This is really a colored drawing more than a painting. There's horses and chickens and cattle everywhere, and expatriates and tourists and the people who live in Yelapa. This is a gouache painting, the only one I'm going to show you. I don't do too much. I did gouache a lot for my illustration work, but not that much for plein air painting. But this is the backyard of a friend of mine in Sebastopol. I've profited on the Cape from taking workshops. We have, within spitting distance of each other, we have the Fine Arts Work Center and the Art Association and Castle Hill Center for the Arts in Truro. And I painted this in one of the first workshops I took with the painter Bob Henry, a wonderful teacher. This was the teacher of this workshop was Bert Yarbrough, and the teacher for this where I did this painting was Paul Stopforth, the South African painter. He works in gouache a lot. So when Olga said that you can still see some of my work at Midway, this is what you see. This is several people from in the neighborhood, not all from Midway, found all these discarded windows when they were redeveloping one of the buildings and handed them out to different artists. And my wife Cynthia and I got together to decorate this with a poem and some images. At that time, they were making a film downstairs at Midway, and there were all of these vans lined up behind the building, and that there used to be railroad spurs back there, which a few of them, I don't know if you still see them, but they kind of emerged through the macadam, and so you feel like a railroad train could come riding up at any moment, although that would be impossible. And I just learned that I made a mistake here. This window is upside down. Do you see the little latch on the top? That should be in the bottom, but too late to do anything about that. So now I'm going to talk about cartoons. Jim O'Brien is here tonight, so he will recognize this image. He and I, in the, I don't know, I think I met him in 1967 or 68. We were both in Madison, Wisconsin, working on an underground paper called Connections. Well, this would have been 68 because this is a reference to the police riots during the Democratic National Convention in Chicago in 68. And there's a lot of information that goes into this comic, but I think I will leave it at that. Let me just say, if you're a fan of underground comics, which were around at that time, I think that particular issue of Connections, our underground paper, had a comic by Gilbert Shelton called The Day I Set My Chickens Free. And I was feeling miserable about the level of repression that was happening, so I changed it into The Day I Set My Gangsters on My Freaks. So that was the basis for this. From Madison, so one of the leaders of that paper, Bob Greener, moved out to the Bay Area, and he came back to Madison for some reason and told me I should come out to the Bay Area too. So I went with my then girlfriend and joined him and a bunch of other people in a collective called People's Press, where we put out a pamphlet called The Earth Belongs to the People, we had various pamphlets on the Black Panthers and the Vietnam War, but this one was our most successful. It was called The Earth Belongs to the People, and it had cartoons on almost every page. Part of the comic was a polemic against the overpopulation scare, where that book, The Population Bomb by Paul Ehrlich, was very popular then. And if you're familiar with Food First and Francis Lappé, we were arguing that hunger is is not simply a matter of too many people. It's a matter of the way food gets distributed in a corrupt system. And that's what this cartoon is about. This is another cartoon from The Earth Belongs to the People. And in here we're making the argument that against the idea that consumers and the average middle class desire for things is the whole explanation for the pollution problem. And we argue that the fact that decisions are made for profitability rather than for human needs is much more the root of that problem. I wish I had some paintings from the year I spent in New York. I didn't do any political art, but from the Bay Area, I went to New York, and from New York, I came to the Boston area in order to work for a place called Urban Planning Aid. At Urban Planning Aid, we worked on transportation issues and housing issues, and the subgroup that I was in worked on, helped to produce these publications to support the work of the organizers. And these are some of the books and pamphlets that we put out, all with my drawings on the cover. And we also put out a press service for the community newspapers, which were very popular then. And this is a cartoon in support of rent control, I suppose, that went out with the community press features. That kind of asbestos siding was ubiquitous at that point in the communities around Boston. And Jim O'Brien, who was here, and I, during the time that I was working at UPA, we were both at a meeting of some radical historians and who were trying to figure out how people trained in history, which I was as an undergraduate, and Jim was as a PhD, and a lot of my friends were. How people who were studying history could support the organizing campaigns and the advocacy campaigns of the activists. And Jim and I decided to put out this comic expressing in comics form the new history, which eventually became much better known through the books of Howard Zinn and others. But The Underhanded History of the USA was published first as an issue of Radical America, and then as a publication of the New England Free Press, and it was a success because there were no bills to pay. We Jim and I didn't make any money on this, and a lot of people bought it. Also at that time, I started working for a magazine called Dollars and Cents, and this was a cover I did for a collection of the cartoons I did for Dollars and Cents. It's kind of a riff on the Golden Age comic books, superhero comic books, translated into class struggle, I guess you would say. Dollars and Cents is the one periodical or project that I joined in those busy years that's still standing. And I did lots of work for them over a long period of time. And the most fun I had was working on this series called the comic strip of neoliberalism. This is a panel from one of those comics. A lot of the comic strip of neoliberalism is based on the writings of Marcos, the leader of the Zapatista movement in Mexico. And in one of his writings, this is a quote from him: "The neoliberals shoot the clock of history in order to ensure that there won't be any morning other than the one of today over which they preside. So stop or I'll shoot, oh heck, I'll shoot you anyway." One of the first installments in that series was Mega Dreams of Hyperdevelopment, about these plans to develop the transportation corridor at the Isthmus in Mexico. I won't read all this to you, but I think you can get the. Well, one thing that I really liked about this comic is that Wendy Call, who has done a lot of work in the Isthmus campaign in Mexico, and who also had some connection to Dollars and Cents, took this comic to meetings where no Spanish or English was spoken. People were speaking in indigenous languages, and they looked at these comics and they understood exactly what they were about. So it's not necessary. That proves that you don't have to read all this verbiage. In the 80s and 90s, I was active in one of the community newspapers that we used to support at Urban Planning Aid. It was called Somerville Community News. This was an opportunity to do political cartoons that mixed it up in things that were very familiar to our readers. A lot of people here tonight have probably been to Davis Square, and they've seen those bronze statues in Davis Square. And this is, I can't remember the political event that this was in response to, but I think it was some pressure to clean up the plaza in Davis Square and make it more restricted and more less free. This was in response to an incident where some kids knocked over a porta potty at a flea market, and I tried to tie and because there was a person of color inside the porta potty, and I tried to tie this to the hate crimes that exist at other levels of society. On the left, you have academia, and in the middle, you have the political class, and over on the right, you have these kids saying, and in every case, there's a euphemism, a fearless intellectual breakthrough, destroying the culture of poverty, or the families involved in the flea market incident said, well, it was just teenagers having a little fun. It was a teenage prank. I'm showing this, which I drew for a PowerPoint presentation to give my idea, to illustrate my idea about the power of political cartoons. Tom Finneran, the guy in the middle of this cartoon, used to run the State House. He represented a district which was experiencing white flight, becoming less and less white. And so he conspired to have his district move along with his constituents to the wider suburbs on the other side of the Neponset River in Milton. And I heard it said, it's hard to believe, but I heard that he saw this cartoon and was very pissed and so flustered and so angry that around that time he had to testify about what he had done with redistricting, and he lied. And he was convicted of perjury, and that was kind of the end of his career. So cartoons actually do have power, even if that story isn't true. Here we were a little less successful. I was at the turn of the century, I was a cartoonist for the Boston Globe. Dan Wasserman, who is the premier cartoonist there, reads Dollars and Cents, so he knew my stuff, and so they needed somebody to do cartoons on local politics, and he brought me in, or he told the Globe to call me up, and I did these kind of cartoons regularly. There's Finneran again, promoting the privatization of public education. Around that time, I think within the space of a month, 2 different people had recklessly gone digging in their front yards and blown up their houses by breaking a gas pipe, and the loose gas ignited. So here's Pizer, who's still around as the head of the Pioneer Institute, big advocate of privatizing education, and Finneran trying to indirectly blow up public education. This was one of my biggest hits at the Globe when they started, and I did a lot of stuff about education and about the education culture wars. here's somebody doing a site where we've determined that you're an underperforming urban school, and in the interest of whipping you into shape, we're here for a site visit. Is this guy a visitor too? No, he lives here, and that's poverty. Here we have Jim Kelly, who was in those days the boss of the city council in Boston, quarreling with the head of the Boston Housing Authority. Attention deficit disorder because he was not a very good listener. During that time, and I'll just give you one example, I did a tremendous amount of work on public health campaigns, particularly occupational health. And here we have Cheo is a character that we made up for this campaign, who's leaving work for the day, and he's wondering whether he should go up there and not bother to hook up his lanyard when he goes and fetches that board. And his bad angel is saying, no big deal, just go get it. And his good angel in the lower right-hand corner is saying, the lanyard, the harness will protect you, but only if you use it. So very, very pedantic, but lots of fun to do these kinds of things. Somewhere in there, so now we come to comics, a little different from cartoons. But I've loved comics my whole life, and Leonard Reifus, who is here tonight, called me out of the blue and said I should do a comic about the comics industry. So I did something called Duopoly, and it begins by asking, what do we love about comics? And which I want to share with you in case you are not familiar with the comics field. We love them because they took us away to a place where anything can happen. School children outwit truant officers, people assume whatever form they please. Animals talk to people, crime doesn't pay. And for many kids, the most wonderful fantasy of all, if you are being mistreated at work, you can just take off your clothes and fly out the window. Okay, that's just to say comics are an art form that express the outer limits of fantasy and dreams of freedom. So what got me going with comics to a large extent, and I don't know if Paul is here tonight, but Paul Buell, who worked with Jim and me back in Madison when we were all students, started, and he's a historian. He and his wife Mary Jo taught at Brown, and he got interested in doing nonfiction comics about the history of the American left, or the history of the left. And he put out these anthologies that I contributed to. And well, it's self-evident what they were about. Radical Jesus was, well, I'll come back to that. I didn't show you the first anthology we worked on. It was about the industrial workers of the world, and I did a comic about again about their comics. That was a radical union or syndicalist union that was competing with the AFL, and they had a wonderful comic strip in their paper called Mr. Block, and this is all about Mr. Block. For Yiddishkeit, which was an anthology, and here we had, as a writer on many of the stories, Harvey Pekar, the great comics writer that came out of the underground movement. Paul scripted, and I drew a comic about all the cartoonists working in the Yiddish language, not cartoonists, poets and writers. And in this case, Moshe Nadir, I don't know if any of you have heard of him, but he was a puppeteer and a humorist and a very interesting character. This is from a very short story that you wrote, where somebody complains that I don't care if he wakes up from a nap and the world is gone, and if the world went under, what do I care? I don't have anything. This is the immigrant dilemma, or issue. If the world, it's not this, is this world my world? I don't know if this world is my world. Maybe it's not my world, but my watch is gone. That's important. And we the narrator asked whether this was a premonition of the Holocaust to some possible, perhaps. For the book about the beats, I did a biography of the poet Kenneth Patchen, who was a favorite of mine from teenage years. We used copious amounts of Kenneth Patchen's poems in this comic, and just as we were getting ready to go to press, somebody said, "This is not fair use." I was under the impression that if you quote a few, 100 words of a written piece, that's considered fair use, but that's not true in the case of poetry, because if you quote, a stanza of a 2-stanza poem, you're taking half of the poet's labor. But we got in touch with the estate of Kenneth Patchen, and they saw the comic and they liked it, so we did get permission. So this is a poem about Kenneth Patchen's youth. He grew up in the steel country in, I think, Youngstown or near there. I remember you could put daisies on the windowsill at night, and in the morning they'd be covered with soot. You couldn't tell what they were anymore. A hell of a fat chance my orange bears had. That if you saw that book work, the comics adaptation of Studs Terkel's Working, I did 2 stories for that: The Garbage Man and The Barber. And this is The Garbage Man. For the Bohemia comic, I did a story about bebop, the revolution in jazz that took place during World War II, and was tied to the social history at that time, where Black people were getting decent jobs in industry because a lot of white workers were being drafted. And combined with these opportunities was the very strict policy of segregation that it wasn't just in the South, it was all over the country. And here you have Billy Eckstine, the leader of one of the more progressive orchestras, where Dizzy Gillespie and Charlie Parker started out, saying, this is a quote from Billy Eckstine, "Baby, some of the times we've had the worst problems during the day, we get on the stand at night, and man, you never heard a band play like that in your life. We'd be wailing." So that's the story of bebop. Here's another panel from that story, defining the hipster as according to some people anyway, the downwardly mobile whites mimicking upwardly mobile Black artists. Radical Jesus was an attempt, it was published by the Mennonites, to publicize people who take the social gospel seriously. Radical Jesus turned out to be an unfortunate title. It's people who respond well to the word radical didn't respond well to the word Jesus, and vice versa. But I had a lot of fun working on this, and I interviewed my friend Mary Jane Rosati, who did civil disobedience against the military industry and went to jail for it. And in her telling, she says, "What was a good little Catholic girl like me from a quiet little town doing in prison?" Well, when I left home, I should say, when I fled, I was so full of rage at the church for its patriarchy and its hypocrisy. I was a ticking time bomb. I remember telling Milan that I was, Milan Kahur, who is here tonight, that I was working on this, and Milan said, "You should not be saying nice things about religion."
Yeah, exactly, because there is something, like 2 different messages: stupid Jesus, idiotic religious message, and leftist, for liberation of mind and social justice. Jesus is used to brainwash people. Yeah, I remember we discussed it.
You remember that argument? Yes.
Yeah.
But did you get the book, Milan?
No, I would love
come
to.
on, man! You could, before you say another word about stupid Jesus, you gotta
Yeah, thank you. I will.
Check out our book. I didn't do the whole book. I did 1/3 of it. The first part was by oh boy. Now we see how I'm sorry, but by a wonderful cartoonist in Brooklyn who did the social gospel in modern dress, and then cartoonist in Cleveland, Gary Dumm, did the middle section about the radicalism during the Reformation, and I did the final section about modern day, from abolitionism to the present. People doing good work, like this person. This doesn't actually look like Mary Jane, but this character is based on Mary Jane, who was affiliated with Plowshares, the Berrigan Brothers organization. More recently, so here, this was my anti-Christian pamphlet. Ideas Can Be Weapons. I've done a bunch of work for, backing up a little, when we were in Madison, one of the most popular lecturers in the university was George Mossy, who early in his career, he was a German Jewish refugee from the Nazis who came to the Midwest and was a popular charismatic teacher of cultural history and intellectual history, European. And he started out teaching about the Protestant Reformation, and he switched his focus in later years to the history of fascism. And but this comic, well, the first thing I did for the Mossy Institute, which was endowed by Mossy, who came from a wealthy family, was the story of George Mossy. And the second one was this here, Ideas Can Be Weapons, George Mossy on the Puritan Tradition from Revolution to Empire. And I wish I had time to share some of the contents of this. This is my latest, actually. This came out this year. And Dave Wagner, who was also involved with Connections and Radical America and all those other periodicals that started in Madison, is a wonderful comics writer, and he and I worked on a couple of things together. I think I'm going to. Oh yeah, this is the other comic I worked on with Dave. Was a survey of the movement in Madison during the '60s, and this page illustrates the idea of Mississippi Eyes. A lot of the political activists and the artistic activists in Wisconsin in those days, some principal people, they were part of Freedom Summer. They went to Mississippi or other states in the South to do voter registration primarily in 65, 66, around there. And here's Paul Brynas. He comes back from the South with Mississippi Eyes. And I don't think you can read the newspaper, but it says, South Africa seats its first all-white Congress, and slum clearance is seen as a huge success. Agent Orange is being used in Vietnam for the first time. Recriminations over the Bay of Pigs fiasco. The world is the world, but the way that you look at it, it gets turned on its head when you go to Mississippi. So that all seems like quite a bit of politics. I do sometimes take a break, and this was a comics anthology that I did with my friend Sue Rice. That's Sue peeling an orange on a bus going west. She and I both did stories for this anthology about our trips to the Bay Area. And I also did this story, and I'm going to take a little chance here and sing this. This is a comic and a song, and when I got to Midway, I turned it into a performance piece that I did with that group that Olga mentioned, the Fort Point Theater Channel. So here we go. On my way to Carthage, I came upon a bottle of perfume. I kept it on my person till my person died and took it to her tomb. I didn't realize it, but I had to leave it there. And if I ever lied about it, said I didn't care, you know the truth because you found that bag of marijuana in my room. You know the truth because you found that bag of marijuana in my room. Thank you. So that also in Fortune Cookies, that anthology, I did the first part of what was going to be a book-length memoir about my year in the Bay Area, and here we are heading out to the Bay Area, looking for the transformation of life, root and branch. So the stories I did in collaboration with Paul and to some extent with Harvey Picard got longer and longer, and finally I did a book about this guy, Herbert Marcuse, which came out in 2019. When you do a comics biography or any biography, I guess you are dealing with inputs and outputs. So this isn't actually in the book, but the pieces of it are in the book. You see the inputs for Herbert Marcuse were the philosopher Hegel and the French Revolution and the Marxian revolutions, and very significantly on the left, the revolutionist Rosa Luxemburg. And the outputs are the idea of eros. The whole body is an erogenous zone. These remarkable ideas that Marcuse put out in his book, Eros and Revolution. Eros and Civilization, which was began as a critique of Freudian psychology, but took it into the philosophical realm. This is the end of Rosa Luxemburg, which is in my telling the trauma that sets Marcuse's career into motion. She was assassinated by proto-Nazis in 1919 and tossed into a canal. Another very, very significant woman in Marcuse's life who was influenced by him and later influenced him was Angela Davis. And here she is as a kid. When she was a kid in Birmingham, Alabama, a black family tried to move into a house across the street, and the house got blown up. So she asked her mother, "Why are white people so hateful?" And her mother says, "Don't say that. Many white people helped us when I was working on the Scottsboro case." And I won't go into all of that, but then her parents decide that she has to be sent to New York, and from there she goes to a day school in Manhattan, and from there to Brandeis, where she meets Marcuse. And here's the fellow I'm writing a book about. I'm trying to do a comic book about now, William Morris, the English designer and who evolved into a socialist agitator later in his life. But the fact that he was an artist has made this a tremendous amount of fun with me. So I want to share with you some of the preliminary sketches and reworkings of some of Morris's material. So William Morris, if you're not aware of him, was born in the 1830s, lived until the 1890s, was a child of privilege and very horrified by the squalor and the ugliness of Victorian civilization in London, which is where he lived mostly. And he was inspired as an undergraduate by a trip he took with his friends to visit the cathedrals of northern France. Here he is with his friend Ned Burne-Jones, his friends Burne-Jones and Fulford, visiting Amiens, which he and this is how I plan to use this image in the comic. Here they are tramping around. These three guys tramping around northern France, and Morris describing these cathedrals as the kindest, the most loving of all buildings. But apparently, he was most while he loved some churches in different ways. He was most struck by this particular cathedral, Amiens. And when he came back to England, he met Dante Gabriel Rossetti, the leader of the pre-Raphaelite painters movement. Rossetti is always described as an incredibly charismatic figure. When you see photos of him, which these sketches are based on, doesn't look that charismatic to me, but I guess you had to be there. Rossetti introduced him to the woman he married, Jane Burden, who was a stableman's daughter. And Rossetti did many paintings of Jane Burden. Well, I'll read you the caption. Rossetti would draw and paint Jane countless times in the years to come, invariably with a Botox lips, stovepipe neck, and hard gaze that he liked to attach to all his female figures. And by way of contrast, Morris tried his hand at oil painting, and this is my rendition of the one extant oil painting of Morris's, also Jane, which to my eyes looks a lot more like the real, rather melancholy and beautiful woman that he married, who actually did become, by all accounts, Rossetti's lover. So it's a Rip Snorton story, I'll tell you. Yes, on the back of the painting he wrote, "I cannot paint you, but I love you." They married in 1859. This is adapted from a medieval manuscript that had a huge impact on Morris. Froissart's history of chronicle. It's called the Chronicles of Froissart, and this depicts a bizarre incident where the royal court of France, the king and the nobles in those decadent times decided to try and humiliate a lady of the court who was trying to get married after she'd been widowed, and to humiliate her, they dressed up as savages. They painted their faces brown and they covered themselves with leaves and twigs, and then somebody tripped. Somebody who was carrying a torch tripped, and most of them got burned to death. So Morris looks at this picture in Froissart's manuscript, and he says, "Those daisies on the wall, those are really beautiful." So he used that daisy motif in a lot of his design work over the years. And Jane brought home some blue serge. I'm not quite sure what serge is, but their first big textile project was to do that daisy motif on a bed curtain. So and just to indicate what they were in rebellion against, this was what a typical embroidery project in the mid 19th century in England would have looked like. It's called Berlin wool work. That was and I tried to make it look as dreary as possible, but I think it probably was pretty dreary. So this is a rough version of that page. For his, so I mentioned that Morris was a man of means. He built a beautiful house for himself and Jane, and he got all of his friends to help decorate it. These are some of the pieces that went into the drawing room of this house that he built. It's called Red House. A rug and some. He got his Burne-Jones, his friend that I mentioned, to do these scenes from medieval history, and he adapted some of those beautiful design elements that he admired so much, so this is roughly what I'm going to do with that scene. And if you picture a typical Victorian interior, you know that this is not that. It was quite different, somewhat Spartan. And here you have Morris and his friends saying, "We'll make this the most beautiful place on earth. No wallpaper. We'll embroider our own hangings. We'll embroider our own wall hangings. No pictures hanging from walls. Every cabinet, canopy, or wall will tell a story, and we'll be." And there's Rossetti, who says, "We'll be the heroes and also the villains." And the architect who designed the house, Philip Webb, says, a cupboard that doesn't tell a story will sing a song. And Rossetti's wife, Lizzie Siddals, who, if any of you have ever seen that I think the most famous pre-Raphaelite painting is the painting of by Hunt of the of Ophelia. So that was Lizzie Siddal. That's her over in the corner, and she did some of the mural work in the Red House and from Genesis. That's her rendition of Rachel from Genesis. Later in the book, we have this. This is when it gets more. This is when we get political. As his marriage was getting into trouble, and as Jane was taking up with Rossetti, Morris went on a trip to Iceland, which was highly inspiring to him. That was one of his great inputs. So Morris first visited Iceland in 1871. This was the same year as the brief period of revolutionary worker rule in France, known as the Paris Commune. And he rode home from Iceland. The only reference he made at the time to the Commune was, he said, in a letter to Jane, he compared these huge lava fields to the war-torn cobblestone streets of Paris in 1871 during the Commune and the repression of the Commune. Here you see the result of the uprising in Paris was the summary execution of 10 to 20,000 rebels. Here's the detail of that. This is a combination of several photographs which the counter-revolutionaries took to show off how brutally they dealt with the working people of Paris. Now, hold on a sec. I'm going to get a glass of water. Excuse me. So I think this is the last bit. I'm going to show you some odds and ends. I'm not sure these are all going to go into the Morris comic, but they're all related. So Morris went from having his whole view of society upended by this trip to Iceland, and seeing the really very naked struggles going on around him in that period in England. To his socialist face, he was a leader of one of the big pretty big socialist organizations, not so big by modern standards. And after many years of soapbox preaching and infighting and all the frustrations that go with that kind of activity, he went back to one of his first enthusiasms, which was to create books that would be like small cathedrals. And his final, and I can't even begin to convey to you how many things that he created and how many things he did. But the last thing he did with Burne-Jones was a fine book printing of the works of Chaucer, and Burne-Jones did these very strange wood engravings. Well, he did drawings that were turned into wood engravings by another strange artist in their circle. And so this is Burne-Jones's illustration for the Parliament of Fools is a poem, medium-sized poem by Chaucer, and that here's my version. But instead, which I copied the elements of it, but I didn't copy the ravens. I did a little internet research and tried to do some drawings of rooks. So these are rooks. Morris was fascinated by this particular bird species, and one of the manuscripts that inspired him was the Prose Edda, the fountain of all that we know about Norse mythology. And this actually was not a medieval manuscript; it was 18th century, but it was from Iceland, and The artwork in it is spectacular, and this is my rendition of Loki, the mischievous god Loki being killed while he takes the form of a bird. This is the Book of Kells combined with some drawings I did from life of some plant life around here. Here's Morris as an old man, very near the end. And just a few slides to indicate the Fort Point Theater Channel work that I started doing in 2007, almost immediately after we got to Fort Point. I did some set design for a play called Hotel Cassiopeia, which is largely set in a Horn and Hard Arts, in an automat. And so this was a sketch for the automat. Much more recently, Fort Point Theater Channel did a review called Surf's Up. This is the design for the publicity. Here's some pictures I did for this. So Surf's Up was a review, and it's a sort of a song cycle about modern life in this precarious economy. Do you choose to opt out and do the artisanal life? Things not to do when you're Black. Luxury condos are coming to town. Welcome to the world, my babe. It's all been planned out for you. I'm your friendly algorithm. I've part of why we have the world all figured out for you is because we use robotics. If I'm feeling economically insecure, I have an app for that. And cross your fingers. Maybe the surfs will come up after all. One of the so I did want to say that. Well, I guess I did say that the opportunities that presented themselves to me at Midway, and I'm just skimming the surface here. Have been wonderful. And one of the things that I got to do is learn, is collaborate with my wife Cynthia Barger, who is a poet, and she and I did this booklet based on a visit to Venice Beach. So this is a page from that, and we also did an animated poem. And it's getting to be past 9 o'clock, and so I think it's good that I didn't include that. So that's all she wrote. Any questions?
I muted everyone before, but I think you can unmute yourselves if you want to talk. If you have trouble.
It sounded very quiet.
I have tons of questions, of course, but I don't want to take over.
Just go for it, Milan, because it was so beautiful. It was so gorgeous. Like knowing Nick for so many years, just being his neighbor for so many years. Honestly, I did not expect to see all this treasure. Truly.
Thank you all.
Truly.
Socially engaged art. I have a question about that Herbert Marcus, your book, we discussed it already. I always wondered how you sort of came with that idea what Herbert Marcus was telling us. When I was in Czech underground, I thought that Herbert Marcus, I read some of his, essays. I was like, he's like dumb. People in West capitalist societies are free. They don't know what it is, to be oppressed. And then I came here and I realized when he was like telling that actually this system is limiting freedom so much of average people. And then when I started to experience, the reality of this society, the system, I realized, oops, he was actually very right. If you want to survive, you have to shut up obey, the dictatorship of your employer, and otherwise you will be on the street. And if you don't obey, you are absolutely limited, in your sort of life, under capitalism. It's the most horrible system, to limit the personal human freedom. Unless you are wealthy, rich pig, of course, like neoliberal pigs in our neighborhoods, having those condominiums for millions of dollars, So how did you come, to just understand his philosophy?
The Marcuse project was a commission. My pal Paul Buell wanted to do a book about Marcuse and asked me if I would take it on, and I said, well, sure. And to tell you the truth, I have no philosophical training. It was quite a stretch for me to come to terms with somebody like Marcuse, but I knew that he. One of the things I was able to touch on in the book is that unlike today, when we think of college faculties as being way to the left of the American public, in the 60s, it was quite the other way around. A lot of the students were looking at the world in an entirely different way, and some professors were with us, but a lot of them, most were adamantly opposed. And I knew that Marcuse was one of the intellectuals, one of the professors who got it, who seemed to get it, who supported the ideas and the activities of the activists in the anti-war movement and the civil rights movement in those days. So I was willing to try to come to terms. And it ties in with Surf's Up, that show that I mentioned, with all those songs. Tying, we talk a lot about oppression. We don't necessarily talk enough about freedom, but Marcuse talked about it all the time. And I think we have to keep that picture of a free life and a free society before us at all times. And as I learned about Marcuse, that was a thing that excited me. So it was both a job and a form of enlightenment for me. Hi, Mark. Hi, Mike. Hi, Deborah. Hi, Annie. Hi,
Nick.
Rick. And there's
That was
Sylvia
fun.
and Catherine and Jack.
Hey, Nick. Alan Rastow.
Hi, Alan.
How you doing?
Great
Good to see you.
everybody.
I have a question about Morris and the Iceland trip.
Yeah.
Having been to Iceland for a few days and been amazed. Was that a thing then when he went? What caused him to go there and be amazed by it?
He got interested in the Icelandic sagas. He began. He was looking for the grounds for a critique of Victorian civilization, and he first went to Froissart and all that medieval stuff, and he felt like something was lacking, and he started looking into the Northern literature, and he met an Icelandic man, Eric Magnusson, who taught him Icelandic and helped him do translations of the Icelandic sagas. And the more he learned about it, the more he wanted to see it for himself. And as I mentioned, his personal life was in disarray, and he needed to get away. And so he went to Iceland. And I wish I had the quote in front of me, but he, in later years, writing about the impact that Iceland had on him, he said something like this: when you go to Iceland, you realize that the most terrible poverty is not the absolute evil. The absolute evil is inequality. And I think what he found in Iceland, which at that time was so isolated from Europe, and and so much in nature and in a very rough, approximate, version of nature that people had the things that attracted him to the pre-industrial societies were there in evidence, and one of those things was a rough egalitarianism. And you can accuse him of having romanticized that society, but that was the beginning of his political journey, and that was how his critique, which was largely a critique of processes, and he was a great disciple of Ruskin, who said that you can tell whether a building was built by free people if every part of the building is the same, or if every part of the building is different. And that was part of the mystique of the medieval cathedrals, is that every post has a different design, because the people who built the cathedral built it according to their own taste and their own inclinations. So the idea that people who build our greatest buildings have the freedom to make them places that they want to be in and the places that they want to look at, which is unimaginable, right? And
Like around here, Nick?
yeah,
That's for sure.
I'd imagine somebody putting up one of those buildings in the seaport, saying, "Well, I think it'd be nice if this corner had a little it was just a little softer than the rest." No. So
Fascinating. That's amazing.
yeah. So that's how Iceland. That's how I understand Iceland being the key for Morris.
Well, I think it still holds something for people today, but
Yeah,
obviously very different.
Yeah. The pandemic kind of spoiled my ambition, which was to travel a great deal to do research for this project. I wanted to see all the Morris sites in England, and I wanted to go to Iceland, never having been. Anybody else?
I think you should still do it. Like every, especially photographers absolutely love Iceland because of the colors, and I think that you would like it. So.
Yeah. Well, we're going to get some northern lights, which are going to be extremely fierce over the next week. I think we're going to have a little Icelandic experience. If you go out at night and watch the northern skies. Is that Kathy Clark? Hi, Kathy.
You mean you will see northern lights from Provincetown in the next week?
Possibly, yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, very. There's because of thermonuclear activity on the surface of the sun. Apparently, we're going to get some real action in the atmosphere.
Wow, I didn't hear that.
Yeah.
So Nick, can you say? I think you said it, but I missed it. Who commissioned the William Morris book, and when do you think it might be done? Or is that like asking a graduate student when they're going to finish their thesis?
Yeah. When will it be done? Well, before I die is the hope. And this was another harebrained scheme by Paul Buell. His MO is to find the people who have an interest in the topic or the person, and there are these wonderful Morris societies in both the U.S. and England who have signed on, and we have a publisher, Pluto Press in London, and they're just a few blocks from the Morris Society, so they're gonna publish it. I'm supposed to be done with it about a year from now, and I think it'll probably take half a year for it to appear. That's the plan. Yeah, I think part of the project germinated for a long time before I got involved. I think when Jeremy Corbyn was rising in the ranks was becoming influential in the Labour Party in Britain, and in other words, so real socialism, not just lib lab, left liberalism. was becoming a force within the Labor Party. I believe that Paul had a conversation with Tariq Ali, who's a leading Marxist thinker in Britain. And Tariq Ali says, we have all sorts of people who are trying to learn about socialism, and the only thing they have to go on are these Germans, Herbert Marcuse, George Mossy, Karl Marx, Theodore Adorno, and Walter Benjamin, and blah blah blah. But there is an English tradition. There's every country has a socialist tradition, because every country that's been touched by the Industrial Revolution has had a response to that, a rebellion against that. And William Morris is situated his socialism very much in the country where the Industrial Revolution began, and so his story is particularly important for that reason. So that was the germ. At the time we did. Now Jeremy Corbyn has gone down in flames, and but I do think. Pardon me.
It's so sad, they just pushed him out, and
Yes.
neoliberals didn't like him, at all.
But I think it's just as important as ever to tell that particular story.
Yeah, I can't wait. The book, it looks just the pages that you showed of the book are just delightful. So much detail. Kind of like, I mean, you've done a really nice job of kind of portraying his aesthetic, and it's just beautiful.
Thank you. That was the idea.
I love that you are like using your incredible artistic talent for art for a social change. That's what I value so much, and I am missing it mostly among young people now. It's interesting. Tell me why old people like us are more progressive than the young generation who are like focused on their, I call it meism nowadays among young people. It's me.
Milan, I call it okay. Milan, I call it okay boomer.
Meism. Me, my identity is the most important. Who cares about social issues?
I think that's true. Sorry. I think the young people are out there.
I do too. I think you're wrong.
Okay, fine. Give me the proofs.
By young people, I guess.
I think so too, just to chime in, Milan.
No, they are not fighting for, anyway, for social issues, their
some of
art
them
is
are.
meism.
Well,
It's
maybe
all
not the
about
ones you know. Maybe not the
Yeah,
ones you know.
but the ones, I mean, we have one right here, a youngin', I won't call attention. And I think she would take exception to that. And I think a lot of the important movements that are happening right now have a lot of young people leading them.
Yeah, what about Phyllis's son, Phyllis and Jim's son?
Yeah, exactly.
Phyllis Ewan's son now represents the ward where we lived in Somerville for 30 years, so that's cool.
Yeah.
And
there are some.
he succeeded one of the most progressive aldermen in the old days when we lived there.
But that system sort of is focused more on money making, be rich, be successful, have positions at, that's my experience. I have been here 35 years. Okay, fine.
Sue Plessner, hello.
Well, we old people make a lot of
muted?
noise, but are we
Oh my
effective?
God.
That's another question.
I think that maybe it also, well, I mean, this we can't really consider last 2 years because everything was shut. But I think that it also depends where we go, what we watch, what we participate in, and on our. I would think that if you go to open like open mics, or and I don't mean the one that you went to, Milan.
Yeah. You see, I went to one of them.
No, but that was
kicked out from the pub.
no, but that was music. I mean, spoken word. And there, it's just it's like that. I think it's just I don't know. I think that because we tend to have most friends and relationships within our own, more or less within our within the same age, and so we probably don't really know what is going on other than what is presented in media, and that's like freak show.
I used to teach young people for decades here, so I was observing how they are changing from the year to year.
But maybe
So-
they are changing because they, I don't know, they can't, the kids that are actually fighting for social change, or maybe they're not able to afford the school anymore, and maybe they are doing it differently through different channels.
I wish.
Well,
I have to
especially
say-
now the
What did you say, Amy? We didn't hear you. Oops.
No, yeah, but again, I don't want to take away the subject of Nick art, but I admire that he is like, a lot of his work is socially conscious for a social change, etc. That was always what I was saying. Art should be always political.
Well,
And I was like, of course.
I have to say, Milan, it was very nice. It's very nice to learn different perspectives. And Nick, it was great to talk to you about the William Morris stuff a little bit, because I come at it from a very different perspective. So I'm learning the history from Nick's perspective. And I got to share a little bit about what I was learning when I was growing indigo. So it's just so cool to gather and have understand different perspectives. And you just don't know until you've walked in somebody's shoes, which we can never do. So I'm really grateful for this. And Nick, I am so impressed. This was incredible. Thank you for your work.
Thank you, Amy. Thanks for your inside info about indigo, and Amy is a wonderful fabric designer and knows all there is to know about dyeing and weaving and so on. Yeah, indigo is a big part of the story. That bed curtain that I showed you is, I don't think that, as you know, Morris got involved in dyeing, but at that time that was something that his wife picked up at the market. Yeah. Thanks, Amy.
Morris is really very, very interesting, multi-layered, I would say, figure. I'm so happy that it so happens that Nick is working on this subject. I'm absolutely enchanted by this figure. And not that I know a lot of his work, but I enjoyed learning more and using little bits and pieces of my knowledge with my work or with my students, young and old and all that. And what I would like to say that the changes, the social issues, any issues that we want to discuss and we want to present through art, they are presented, they are delivered well when the art is convincing.
Yes.
And to make it convincing, to see it as convincing art, it has to be good. And when we have the good art, we are convinced by the issues that art is delivering to us. That's why it's so important that we have Nick today, right?
And I'm sorry I sort of passed over the non-political art so hastily. There's not much to say about it, but part of the migration the call of the Cape to me is its beauty, which is that's why Morris is such an interesting character, because he what the first thing that he hated about, and what he referred to as modern civilization, was not any more specific than that, was its ugliness. And he grew up at the edge of Epping Forest, and as a boy lived out all of his dreams of heroism and chivalry, and also became familiar with every single twig and every single bird. Like I showed you some birds, and the Cape, I don't think propaganda is a dirty word, and I don't think didactic is a dirty word, but it's, in order to do effective propaganda and to be effectively didactic, you tend to emphasize the negative. And so it's been a great joy to me to open my pores to the natural beauty that exists out here, and to turn it into other kinds of art. And I think in a humane society, that pleasure would be available to many more people than it is today.
That would be great. That would be so good.
That's incredibly insightful.
That is true. Let's do our part. Let's do our part in this. Today we have a great crowd. So that idea, that message, that beauty, that thing that only art can do is given to all these many people who I watched. The number is changing, but it was so many of us. So let's bring these mixed ideas, visual ideas, our own ideas, because being artists, we have the privilege of delivering the ideas in convincing artsy way. Thank you, Nick, very much for showing us how to do that.
Thank you, Olga, Hannah, Mark. Thank you all.
Well, art should not be privileged.
Art is the bread, as one of your friends
should not be
said.
privileged.
It is a bread. Bread needed
Artists
for
should
everyone.
not be privileged people. Sorry.
Nick, are you going to start maybe a subscription service where you send out, a cartoon or a comic or a painting a day or a week? That would be incredible.
That's a good idea. I do post my art on Facebook, but what were you thinking of? Like that Facebook is, as
like
my
an
daughter,
email,
Yeah,
kind of
yeah.
like, yeah.
Newsletter.
I think when my daughter Ruby heard that I had joined Facebook, what did you say? It was a cesspool of depravity that I would read it from her.
I think that's a wonderful idea to have a subscription.
So do you plan to focus on the most hot issues of our humanity faces, which is global climatic collapse and coming nuclear war at the same time? That's what we are like facing now, which is unbelievable, what's going on. And the artist should be like sort of focusing on that. We should be like screaming against that stupid capitalism, which is greedy, bubbling over the whole globe.
Just horrible. Just horrible.
Don't forget the internet. That could be the most socially damaging of the three.
Yeah.
Well, use what you got to get what you need, right?
I totally understand what Ruby meant about Facebook, but it is an easy way to reach a lot of people. So.
Yeah. But
I don't use it.
I would love to send out some e-blasts. That's a wonderful idea.
Yeah.
It's I always wind up spending an hour sifting and winnowing through my list of contacts when I do that. So
that's the problem, and I think one person that can give you some advice, it's Mark. I think he left already, but Mark Miller is excellent at these things, like how to keep a good mailing list. And but other than that, once you send a few emails, you do it quickly, so
yeah.
it will be nice. Yeah.
Nick, do you have a website?
Yes, it's long. It's the URL is kind of long, but it's my name. It's
So you are in the Instagram as well, right?
I'm on Instagram, but I don't do anything there. But
You should. That's a good way to show your work.
Yeah, good place. Since I do have a website, a good place to start would be to bring it up to date. It's got a lot. There's a lot of stuff there that I didn't talk about tonight that I've done over the years. It's nickthorkelson.com.
Well, that's very difficult.
Not really.
But the subscription service, like, like comics from a Clever American or something like that.
That's a good title.
Like Heather, yeah, you're getting assigned a lot of work here.
Yeah. Just let me paint.
He can handle it. Look at all he's done.
Yeah.
Oh my God, it's amazing. And I have to say, I told you many times, I love your watercolor, or we love your watercolors. But I was surprised by the one gouache you said that you don't usually use. And it was beautiful. Very colorful.
Yeah, it's a funny medium. It can do wonderful things, and it's kind of the opposite of watercolor. I mean, it's literally the opposite of watercolor because it's opaque. But yeah. Plein air drawing is so much easier than plein air painting, but I keep telling myself I'm going to do more painting, and I mean it too.
Well, you seem to be doing a lot. Also, all the people, the drawings in the beginning, the black and white drawings, and then the ones from the live drawing. What was it called? Those.
The drawn together. The Tuesday night thing. Yeah, I like to. One of the models showed up 2 weeks ago wearing a hockey mask for all of his poses, and I had to leave in the middle. I said, I don't come here to draw hockey masks. I want to see people. Yeah, that's all fun, and that's harder in Provincetown. There's no, you can't. The cafes are all tiny. You can't really draw people without them noticing that you're drawing them.
Oh.
I guess you need to do still lives of the coffee shop, of just the coffee marks and things like that.
Your favorite subject.
Yeah.
Nick, you showed those paintings where you mentioned the workshop teachers that you were in.
Yeah.
And they all seem so different. Were you generous enough to sort of try to take from them stylistic approaches and try them on during these workshops?
Yeah, well, that's the whole idea. The teacher brings his or her preoccupations. It's high time I checked in with some of the wonderful female artists that are attached to those schools, but so far it's all been the guys, and they have their own preoccupations as artists, and
well, I'm sure not every attendee is so willing to do that. I think that's wonderful that you take that from them, and that's what it's all about.
The main thing is that you paint all day for basically 4 or 5 days in a row, and
right.
And you can make amazing progress when you work that hard.
That's so true, because like most of us, we have that that everyday you have to do so many different things, and when you go to a retreat or class or whatever, you just submerge yourself in it, and it's great. Hopefully we'll be able to do all that soon again.
Yeah.
Hopefully, maybe within our Midway Studios, we could arrange something like that.
Yeah.
We could pose for each other with the old way that all poor students used, as I remember, probably they still do that. We just can sit for each other, take turns and paint each other and draw each other. And that would be a good opportunity for all of us.
I have to go out and find my hockey mask.
Okay.
Oh,
We'll do your hockey.
but we want to paint you nude, of course.
Of course, why not?
Yeah.
Alan, I thought you just
immediately
turned off your video, Alan.
Right. While I'm
Nick.
taking my clothes off, right.
Nick, I have,
Just leave the mask on.
He's
no
only
clothes.
wearing a shirt, actually.
Nick, I have a question. Have you had actually the solo show at Midway Gallery?
That's what I was thinking too.
Have you had a solo show at our Midway Gallery?
No, I was in several shows, but no.
Yeah, but the solo.
I think
I
think
will.
nobody had a solo
Yeah,
show.
I
in
will. I
Midway,
will.
very
I will
few.
suggest it. I will suggest it.
Thank
I
you.
think it would be good for the plan of
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Oh, let's
Gallery.
let's
Yeah.
do it, Milan.
put it in the calendar because it's getting busy.
Yeah. It just reminded me. I was like, oh, maybe he didn't have a show.
No, he
Yeah.
didn't. That was a policy. I remember we were told that we were not supposed to have solo shows.
Right.
But now
yeah.
it may be changed, and
No, it's
because you are
changed.
the boss here, Milan.
If it's outside, no, there is no requirement. It must be mixed shows. There can be solo show. Why not?
Let's do it, Milan. It's such a great idea. Such
Yeah.
a great idea.
No.
Wasn't a solo show the last one with the twins?
Yes.
Yeah,
Right
it's
now,
also
we have it
solo
now.
show.
Oh,
yeah.
Liliana, have you seen it?
It is the last day of
No.
the show.
Oh, it's
I have
wonderful.
seen the
Today?
pictures on
Today's
Instagram.
Yeah, it's
Hey.
ending.
Milana, you should film it.
Yeah.
Did anyone film it?
In the middle of the week.
I don't know what to do first.
Middle of next week.
April, we have to have it down April 7th.
Yeah.
Oh, I will let my
I
friend
will-
know because she
I will
wants
go to
come and
tape it.
see.
Yeah, buddy. Yeah.
Oh, so great to know.
Yeah.
I managed to bring some of my friends from the outside to see the show. It's an amazing show, truly. If somebody who didn't see it yet would have a chance to come, I highly, highly recommend it. Not because I love them, twins, but because I find this show is, I don't know how to describe it. It gives you so much on the top of the amusement and amazement. That is the first
Yeah.
thing that you get. And then you start thinking and you can't stop it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Very sparkly.
Very sparkly too.
15 Channel Center Street, Boston.
Come everyone.
Hey, Nick, I have a question
Very
real
much.
quick.
Yes.
It's Key. How are you?
Hey, I'm good. How are you?
Good. I'm just curious for someone like you who had so many different wide-ranging art forms and talent and practices over the years. Is there a particular form of art, whether it's your music or the various other visual arts that you've sort of experimented with, that you sort of favored or maybe find yourself losing the most track of time with, the kind of that you kind of just lose yourself into?
Lose myself. I think I didn't talk about music, but that is where you can kind of give yourself over 100% in a way that I don't think I've ever totally had that experience with visual art. not. I focus on comics and cartooning not because I love it the most, but because it's well for a lot of reasons. I feel like I know there's so many visual artists who are so great. It feels overwhelming. I'm just talking about this from a material point of view. To the extent that I had to pick and choose based on economics, comics made more sense for me than painting and drawing. But music is, especially when I'm writing a song, I can't describe that particular kind of pleasure when you hit on just a pair of chords or a series of chords that take you out of it, that express things that you can't express with words, and not that you can't express things that are wordlessly in visual art, but it might even be that the feelings you can express in music are the saddest feelings and the most painful ones. Maybe just because those are taboo and you can't go around wearing them on your sleeve as a rule. But I do think coming just in music you can come to terms with any emotion. I always when I run into people who hate jazz, my answer is always my computer just got unplugged. My answer is that in jazz you can express the most quotidian and stupid and angry and blissful and ecstatic and crazy feelings that pass through you as directly as you're able, and other art forms don't quite give you that latitude. So yeah, never thought about that, but thanks for the question. I think that's where I would land.
Really, jazz is the biggest achievement of American culture. There is nothing which was given to the whole globe,
Definitely.
Yeah.
I feel like that kind of came through in your comic, not the comic, the drawing in the William Morris part about the cabinet singing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah. That is an actual sideboard that he and his friends built for the Red House, and when I drew it, it came to me that it was like a song. So yeah. That picture I showed visualizing the Red House, that was kind of a turning point in my visual research for the Morris project. To see somebody create a home that just was so jazzy, really, was a revelation. So and it's open to the public, so I got to get over there someday. Sue Plessner, are you still here? Oh. My sister-in-law lives in Cardiff, from England, but I think she may have checked out. Sue, I think actually went to one of the same university as William Morris and believes that she occupied the same rooms that he occupied. So she's my source, my sister-in-law, Sue Plessner.
All right, that was an enjoyable evening. Thank you so very much. Thank you, Nick, so very much.
Thanks,
Thank
Nick.
you,
Great. Good to see you.
Anna and Mario. Thank you, everyone. So very
Thank
much.
you.
Revolution, revolution.
Definitely, definitely. That's for sure.
There's
Great
the
to see
jazz.
We
everybody.
can.
There's the
good to see you
jazz.
all.
box.
Anna, you can close us. Thank you so very much for your patience and for your kindness.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank
Good
you.
night, everybody.
Thank
See you
you.
next time.
Night.
Bye.
Good night.
Bye,
Bye
everybody.
bye bye
True
bye.
Rice, good night. Leonard, good night.
See you at the solo
Bye
show.
bye bye.
Bye.
Kathy, good night.